How many solutions or roots or zeros are we going to find here? 4. How does she know that we're going to find 4? Because there's what? Because there's 4 x's. Close.
Oh, x was in the first one.
The exponent on the first one is 4. The first one here is a 4, so that tells me that there are going to be 4 solutions we're going to find. So when do we stop working on this problem? When we find 4 solutions. I'm so glad you came today. Okay, so the first thing we do is we put in the calculator and we hope that we find all the roots, the zeros, the solutions in the calculator. So I go to my calculator and I'm going to type in, go to y equals. I'm going to clear out whatever this is there. And I'm going to go ahead and type in, and I would do this if I were you, 2x, just so you make sure you know how to do this. 4 minus 3x to the third. Oh, don't do that. See what I'm doing there? I made it all in the power. So you got to delete that out. Get out of the power. Minus 3x to the third minus 58x squared. Oh my goodness, I did it again. Why didn't you stop me? Minus 58x squared plus 157 minus 210. And our hope is that we find 4 solutions here and then we're done. I type in 0. I'm missing an x. Thank you so much. All right, does that look good? So then I'm going to go ahead and hit zoom 6. I don't know, just to reset my zoom in case it was on something crazy. And we're looking for the 2 intersections. Roots mean when does it equal 0? This little yellow icon up here says it's still thinking. So as soon as that's done, I can start working on it. And I would be careful, even though it looks like it's clearly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I would go ahead and hit second calc just to make sure and hit the intersection, this 5th option. And I just hit enter 3 times. It says first curve, it says second curve, it says guess, and then it's going to give me a solution. And it tells me 5 is one of my solutions, so I go ahead and write on my paper x equals 5. And then I do it again. So I go second calc, intersection, which is option 5, and I hit enter twice. And this time, before I hit enter on the 3rd time, I'm going to scroll all the way over so that my guess is closer to the other solution. And it tells me negative 6. So I get my two solutions so far. I get out of this. You guys doing okay? No? What's the matter? Really? It's dead? It was dead or what? Okay. So then I get 2 solutions are x equals 5 and x equals negative 6. And now I have to do all this work to find my other 2 solutions. Okay. So what I have to do is I have to divide out the first solution and the second solution and then do quadratic formula on the 3rd. So I'm going to set up my equation. If we remember, x equals 5 comes from the parenthesis of what? Do you remember? What does that parenthesis look like? So it's going to be x minus 5 is going to be that parenthesis from right there. okay? Because we're figuring out when it equals 0. So we do the opposite, okay? So we're going to divide. If you remember how to set this up, we're going to divide by x. We're going to times by x minus 5. Okay, and what we're taking apart is this 2x to the fourth minus 3x to the third minus 58x squared plus 157x minus 210. Okay, so it's always about the first thing. Okay, meaning whatever's first in line here, which is that, is 2x to the fourth over x gives me 2x to the third. Do I need to slow down? Is that okay? And then as soon as I figure out what the divide thing is, I'm going to multiply it. So I distribute that in, and I'm going to get 2x to the fourth minus 10x to the third. And that's what we get. That's what we want to take away, pull out of what we just worked with. So we got to remember to switch the signs. I like to do it in a different color because it reminds me that I did switch the signs. I get 0 for the first thing. I don't even really have to write anything there. And I get 7x to the third. And if you remember, what do I have to do next? Okay, you got to pull something out. Now, some people like to pull everything down. I personally don't want to write more than I have to. So just have to at least pull one thing down. And then we start over. So now the first thing is the 7x to the third. So 7x to the third over x equals 7x squared. That immediately gets times by x minus 5. Distribute it into both parts. We get 7x to the third minus 35x squared. That's what we want to take away from it. We have to switch our signs. Am I going too fast? I feel like I'm going too fast. Okay. And then I get 0. And then somebody help me out here. What's negative 58 plus 35? 23, is that right? Okay, so 23x squared. Then we bring down the next thing, 157x. And then we start over again. 23 x squared over x equals 23x. X minus 5. So as soon as I get that 23x, I distribute it in. I get 23x squared. 23 times 5 is 115. Is that right? Negative 115x. Switch signs. I get 0 and 272. Is that right? And then finally bring down the negative 2. Ooh, that doesn't look right. What did I do wrong? 23 was a negative. Should have been a negative. Thank you. So I knew I got something wrong because we should end up with what? 0, 0, right? Okay, so that was a negative. So that should have been a negative. That should have been a negative 23x squared. And that should have been a positive 1, was it 15? X. Okay. Then when I switch the signs, positive turns into a negative there. That's gone. We get 42. 42x. Why sad face? Tired. Got a case of the Mondays on Tuesday. Okay. Now I think this is going to work out. Unfortunately, when you're testing tomorrow, if you say, how did I mess up? There's not going to be 5 people going, you missed that negative, right? Unless you're cheating. So if you miss something, I kind of recommend just starting over. I hate to say it because it's super hard to find your mistakes. So then finally, 42x over x equals 42. And we get 42x. And if I did it right, 42 times 5 is 210. Negative 210. But don't forget to switch your signs. The biggest mistake people make is they forget to switch your signs. I know that I've done this correctly. How or why? Because you get those double zeros at the end, right? You don't get, if you end up with 25, okay, you don't just go erase and change it to a 0. You have, that means you made a mistake. And just so you know, if you don't fix that mistake, the next problem cannot work either, okay? So now I have to take the answer to this, and the answer is sitting right here. And now I have to do the same thing, but instead of x minus 5, I'm going to do x plus 6, which is the other one. Okay? So I'm going to go x plus 6. And then, oh, that's not actually what I want to do. I want to say divide x times x plus 6. And then you have to tell me what was here. What was it? X to the 2x to the third. (22x), 23x, plus 42. Okay, I wrote that right? Thank you. Okay, and then we do it again. Again, we're hoping to get the 0, 0. This one should go, every time you do it, it should go a little bit faster because there's less terms to deal with. So I start with that first one, and I divide it by x. I get 2x squared times by x plus 6 gives me 2x to the third plus 12x squared. Switch signs. I get 0 and negative 5x squared. Bring down the next thing and start over. Minus 5x squared divided by x gives me negative 5x times that by x plus 6 gives me negative 5x squared minus 30x. Switch signs. Gives me 0 and 53. Did I mess up again? Was it negative on the previous problem? Yeah, man, it keeps I keep messing up that 23, don't I? Negative, negative, so that makes this positive 7x. These problems can make you absolutely crazy because if you make those little mistakes, you can't really get through them, okay? That's why I'm giving you one problem tomorrow for the whole period. So if you make a mistake, you just kind of try to keep working through it. (7x plus 42). Change signs. Get 0, 0, just like we needed. So far we are 2/3 through the problem. Okay. We're 2/3 through the problem. Who said what? Yeah, I figured. So now we got to take this last chunk, because all that did was to pull out those two other solutions, and this last part, which is right here, we got to figure out what that answer is. 2x squared minus 5x plus 7. Finding its roots means when does it equal 0? So that's the question we're asking. So we're going to use a quadratic formula, which will be given to you tomorrow. Do you want me to write it up on the board? Okay. X equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we're allowed to use this formula as long as we just have an x squared as our highest power. And it's already in order for a, b, and c. So I go ahead and I say x equals negative 5, so that makes it positive, plus or minus square root. Why do I have to put 5 in parentheses? Because it's negative. So we fill out the parts. First thing I want to do is find the discriminant. Does anyone remember what the discriminant is? Under the radical. So I want to figure out what is that number under the radical. So type in just what's under there, not including the radical, but what's underneath it. So this right here, I want to figure out what that chunk is without doing the square root. So in other words, I'm going to go x equals 5 plus or minus, I know it's over 4, square root of something. Negative 31. Okay. And then I go off to the side and I ask myself, can I break down 31 so I can pull some stuff out of the radical? So I go square root of 31. I ignore the negative for a second. What can 31 be broken down to? It's prime, so you can't break it down. So we'll leave that alone. The only thing that I would expect you to do to this is what? Anyone know? Take out the I. So then my answer would be x equals 5 plus or minus I square root of 31 over 4. And I would accept that answer, but how is that two answers? The plus is an answer and the minus is an answer. So for some reason, if I said, what are the two answers? You'd write 5 plus I squared root of 31 over 4, 5 minus I squared root of 31 over 4. You had a hand up just to answer that question? Okay. Any questions? Okay. So tomorrow's test is just one of those problems.